Hey everyone, this is just a quick little walkthrough of what to expect on the final exam. Clearly, we're going to be talking about your terms. Uh, well, let's sum it up. Every test we've taken three up to this point in this class. Essentially, it's going to be questions from every single one of those tests. Everything we've covered up to this point. You'll see, of course, your basic outputs, your print statements, your variables, your user input, where you type things in and store it. You'll see if statements and those types of control structures. You'll see, of course, loops, while loops, for loops, that sort of thing. You may see a question or two on functions and maybe one on arrays. Nothing huge. Most of the questions are going to come from the previous stuff I mentioned, but there may be one or two that you see that come from your normal everyday, uh, well, not normal every day, but one or two that come from the last few things we discussed, which would be the arrays and functions. So at the very least, know how an array works, like how you would define it, know how a function works and how you define it, and how that's essentially all you really got to know for that. We haven't built a bunch of projects or programs with those for the most part, so I'm not going to ask you like 20 questions on how they work and everything. But you may see something like a multiple choice question or something, similar-ish. Now, as far as terms go, I posted a study guide for you with terms from all the chapters. Of course, you've got your, Boolean, character, index, integers, floats, doubles. Actually, that should say double there, I think. But float and double are pretty similar, except for one minor difference, and that is essentially a float usually goes to 7 decimal places, and a double goes to like 15. For us, we tend to use doubles because there's no reason to worry about using up that little extra space for the projects we're building. If we were building something like that did millions and billions of calculations per second and size and storage size really mattered, then we would be more particular with what we're choosing. Declaration, definition, compiler. Basically, just know what all these things are and how they define. You'll obviously see some multiple choice type questions on those, just like you did in the previous tests. So I've got my whole list of directions here for you. Now, on the actual coding part, of course, there will be the multiple choice section. Then you'll have some code to read, just like every other test we've done. Be able to read and write print, variables, user input, like I said, if statements, loops, for and while loops, and know a little bit about arrays, functions, or at least, you know, how you would define it or how you would create it, and a very basic understanding of that is good enough. And that's essentially the gist of it. The final exam will consist of the same parts that all the other tests have consisted of. Your terms, maybe one or two little short answer questions, well, a couple of short answer questions. You'll have, of course, code to read where you write what it's going to do on the screen if this code were to run. Now, of course, for any of that code, you have to be able to read it. You can't just dump it into idle or anything like that and run it. I know it knows what it's going to do. I need to know that you know what it's going to do. So that's part of that test. Now, once we get to the end, there'll be a couple of programs, and I will essentially let you pick. You get to pick two of the programs that I've listed, I think, out of the 4 or 5, and you're gonna make two of them. Now you get to pick the two. I think there's two categories. You'll pick one from the first category and one from the second. But you do get to pick. Now the difficulty here is I will occasionally get some people who will they'll get there, they'll pick the first item and they'll start working on it for 15, 20 minutes. And they'll find out, oh, that's kind of hard. And then they'll go to the next one and they'll spend 15, 20 minutes working on it and they'll find out, well, it's not any easier than the first one. And now they've spent 40 minutes and they haven't completed one of the projects yet. So you need to be very careful when you get to that part of the test. And I'll remind you in person if you're taking it with me, obviously, about that situation. Make sure you look through all of them and you pick the one you want to pick and work on that. It might be better for you to swap to another project and try that instead. But statistically speaking, it might be better for you to just stay on that one project and get it fixed instead of, having two unfinished projects, if that, as it were. Anyway, that's the rough gist of the project, or of the project portion of the test. And again, this is going to be laid out just like our other tests. It's just going to be a bit longer. There will be SLOs, most likely, student learning objectives that come with the test. Those will technically be another little part of the test. Not exactly part of the test, but another assignment like where the test is. You have to do those as well. Now, typically the way I do those is I think we get like 5 or 6 SLOs that we have to do, and they're multiple choice questions that you should be able to answer after you finish this class. And if you get, let's say, 2 out of 3 of the questions in a category, you get an extra point added to your test scores. So that's essentially how the SLOs work. Now, they're not optional. You do have to do them. But again, if you're taking it with me, you'll get that prompt once we do it, because that'll be the first thing we do before we get to the actual test. So that is roughly it. The study guide should be posted by the time you see this video. Actually, I'll make sure it's posted right underneath this video, as a matter of fact. And if you have any questions, concerns, or anything, you can either message me or come see me. That's it. Good luck.